All right, I have 5 o'clock. I will go ahead and call the Oversight and Finance Committee meeting to order. Ms. Shook, could we have roll call, please?
Levy,
Here.
Delgado,
Present.
Jacobs.
Here.
All members are present virtually.
Perfect, thank you. Can I have approval of the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All right, there is a motion on the floor to approve tonight's Oversight and Finance Committee agenda and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, seems like everyone voted aye, so there are no nays. That motion carries. Next up, can I have an approval of the minutes for this evening?
So moved. I will abstain from a second since I was not present for the full meeting.
Okay, thank you. I will go ahead and second that. Is there any discussion about the minutes from the February 9th Oversight and Finance Committee meeting? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, there are 2 ayes and 1 abstaining. And just as a reminder, if we ever miss a meeting, fortunately they are recorded, so we can always go back and watch that video and compare that to the minutes, so we're all set to go. All right, next up we have our reports. The first will be an athletic COVID-19 update. One quick question before I turn the floor over. Would you like questions as they come up or at the end?
It'd be great if they were at the end. If
All right.
Yeah.
Board members, is that okay with you?
Yes.
Perfect. Yes. All right. Thank you so much. We will go ahead and get started. Mr. Beard, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I'm looking forward to the update.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope everyone's doing well tonight and enjoyed some of the sun this morning or today. I am going to share my screen here so that we're all on the same page here. All right. Everyone can see that? All right. Okay. All right. Well, to begin, things have been going pretty smooth, as much as they can be expected with this situation. We cruised through our winter sports. It seemed like it happened in like 2 days. Our winter sports did not have the opportunity to do competitions this winter, strictly because the WIA schedule was changed, and a lot of their competitions, when they were eligible to play, they were already into the playoff situation. So with wrestling, they were able to practice about 3 weeks. Got a lot of good stuff. We had around 10 to 12 steady students coming in each day. They practiced the entire 3 weeks without any pauses during their time. Girls basketball also practiced for about 3 or 4 weeks. They were paused for 1 day during that time, and that was just for contact tracing that caused the pause, and we turned out all good, and girls basketball was able to continue. Boys basketball, same. They were able to go about 5 weeks without any pauses during that time, and boys swim went 2 weeks without any pauses. Now, the thing with the winter sports, they didn't get a whole lot of time, so we are going to create some open gym opportunities for them in probably April with our facilities, once the weather breaks for good and we're able to get outside on a consistent basis. So we will be able to create those opportunities for them. We've already started those opportunities in boys swim. They're able to come in twice a week now after the girls are done in the pool to get a little open swim in to get back in the pool and get familiar with things. The alternate fall sports season has started, and we are right in the middle of things. So girls swim has practicing and competitions have started. They started February 8th. They have 3 swim meets in so far. We've live streamed every single one of them. They paused again for one day with the contact tracing. They have one meet coming up this week, Thursday, versus Racine Case. So that they're interested in that or excited about that. Girls volleyball has a match tonight, actually, at Janesville Parker. They've been practicing in competitions. Only hosted a scrimmage so far, and have their first home match on Thursday versus Middleton. It will be tough, but the girls are working hard and doing a very good job. Boys volleyball had a competition last night, along with the two matches so far. It was a tough match last night, didn't do well, but again, the students are practicing very hard and getting after things and doing a very good job. Volleyball we've instituted some interesting COVID protocols with them because they do dive on the floor quite often. We clean the floor after each session with our Virex spray, and we use a push broom. We wipe the balls down every night, and we also clean the net. So we're very cautious with the volleyball sport because there's a lot of sharing of the ball. So we make sure we're doing well with that. Football actually started their official practice yesterday, and they've been able to get outside yesterday and today. They had a pause of 2 days just to make sure we were good with the contact tracing. Again, they've been doing a great job as well. They're excited. It's a good group. Our numbers have been down a little bit across all sports, and the fact that we are missing a lot of our freshmen, which is concerning, but we're going to have a plan to get our freshmen engaged again, hopefully going into the spring and into the summer. Girls tennis also started March 8th, and it's a sport that's been hit pretty hard by the COVID times and the change of the seasons. A lot of our girls participate in girls tennis in the fall, but in the spring, they're doing other things. So we're going to have a whole lot of overlap with our seasons this year, and that's going to happen. And girls tennis is really taking the brunt of that right now. So we have 5 girls out. We're still going to give them every opportunity to play tennis. We're going to play a JV schedule. So we'll be playing a lot of our other JV because we're extremely young with the girls that are out for tennis. So we want to give them the best opportunity to be successful at the same competition level that they can play at. So we'll see how that goes with girls tennis and football this week, but we're off to a good start there. Some positives, the students are used to the screener. They're doing a great job with it. Coaches check the screeners or check students as they come into the facility. And the coaches are letting the kids into the doors. They're using the proper doors depending on what facility they're using. So it's been really good for us, the screener, to make sure that we're following the right protocols. The coaches and student athletes, I made sure I expressed how proud I am of them because they've been doing a fantastic job all around. Being able to handle the different situations, especially now that competitions have started. They're doing a great job. Our girls swim team does a great job of which they have to take it off to swim. And as soon as they get out of that pool, that mask is back on and they're walking over to their areas. And they've been doing a great job of social distancing even in their areas. So things have been going well there. The competition, we're live streaming everything on our Beloit Nice Athletics YouTube page. We're up to 3 streams at a time, and tomorrow we'll be up to 4 streams at a time. So I would really appreciate any prayers that make sure that technology works on that one. So the positives are really good for us right now. It's really not coming out in the competition, wins and losses, but that's not what we're really here for. The students are getting an opportunity to participate in the sports, and I really feel that there's a strong connection with their attitudes and their academics as well. We've been running weekly grade checks for our students. We had a high number of not so good grades at the beginning of February, and we've significantly reduced that last week. So we're definitely trending in the positive direction, and hopefully we can continue to do that. Looking ahead, the competitions, the WIA has reached out about us hosting some WIA tournament events that were assigned to us this year. They're going to allow us to do our swim sectional with 5 schools and no spectators, so we'll be able to do that. We also have been selected to host the track meet, a sectional track meet in late spring. So that might be something where we can come back to the board for approval to have that track meet here for the WIA tournament. But that's if the WIA allows spectators, they don't have what the stipulations would be for that yet. So I will definitely keep everyone in the loop on that. The facilities overlap of the alternate fall and spring seasons. Our spring season starts April 19th. It's going to tax our facilities right now, to be honest, with the football going on. Boys soccer starts March 22nd. That's going to be overlapped with girls soccer. So we're going to have to be creative with our facilities. And I wanted to thank Mr. Lopez and Mr. Vidox for allowing us to use their facilities this winter. They allowed our boys soccer team to come over and our girls basketball team to come over and use, or boys basketball team as well at Cunningham, to use their facilities to allow other teams to use the high school facilities at the same time and to give everybody those opportunities. So I do appreciate that from them. And that concludes my update for athletics. Well, I should mention that activities have been going as well. We've had National Honor Society, band is going, all the areas of band, orchestra, and choir are definitely moving forward. The Increscent newspaper will be starting to meet here soon. So we're definitely getting the kids back involved and engaged, and I think they're loving the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Beard. Committee members, if you have questions, just please throw a question mark in the chat. I have that open, so I will keep an eye out for that. And while we wait, I do have a couple questions. Is there a plan, or would you have some interest in, since things seem to be going so well with just a couple pauses here and there, with rolling this out to the intermediate level?
Well, the intermediate level, we definitely have a plan. I've been meeting with the principals over the last month. I have a meeting with our athletic supervisors on Thursday morning. We're going to look at doing some camps and activities at their schools so they don't have to travel in between schools. So we're going to offer volleyball, basketball, and soccer for 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, and then they'll do those sports for 2 weeks, and then they'll rotate by grade. So 6th grade will start with volleyball. They'll do them for 2 weeks, and then they'll move to basketball for 2 weeks, and then they'll move to soccer for 2 weeks. And then 4th and 5th grade, we're looking at doing some outdoor fun activities that we're leaving up to the schools and the principals to decide what those activities are. So it could be kickball one day, it could be something else, but just something to get them moving around and engaged and being active, which is a big thing right now.
Sounds good. I have another question, but I'll go to Board Member Delgado next.
Thank you for the update, Mr. Beard. It was really good to hear that there has been only minor issues with opening that opportunity for our kids. I know that sports really keeps them motivated and doing good in school. So that's awesome. Just a question, being that, we're starting to get like the spring sports coming back and they're all like outside sports, what would be like the plan, or what kind of plan are you thinking of bringing forward for spectators, since it's going to be like in the outside?
Well, that's a good question. I would like to meet with Carla Smith and Dr. Keyser and Ms. Pels, to make sure that we have a pretty good plan before I speak on that, and think of all the different things, just like we thought through the process for the indoor sports and of no spectators. I'd like to make sure we think through the process and we have all the information before we start to look at the outdoor sports and the spectators. That gives us a different kind of, is another curveball for our situation, in that a lot of our outdoor spring sports participate in facilities that are off campus. So we're around the city of Beloit, so we need to make sure that we are following protocols as well. For example, today I just learned cross country, we usually run at Leeson Park, but we will not be able to run at Leeson Park this year. The city said we will not be allowed to do that. So we'll have to find some alternative options, but that is still being worked on as we speak.
Thank you.
So I had another question. I know you mentioned that we were missing our freshmen. Is that because the tryout period wasn't established before we re-entered sports, or is there some other reason that we don't have freshman involvement?
Well, I truly believe is that our freshmen don't understand the process of how it goes at the high school level, because they haven't been in our building yet, so they don't understand what needs to go on, and we're really only have interaction with them through email or through social media or anything like that. So trying to engage all the students and making sure that they're aware of everything, we're trying our best through our coaches and through all our various emails sent out to engage our students. But it's that face-to-face, here's my coach, all that, we've missed that. We haven't been able to be in contact with them a lot since March. So that's a big push in the spring and the summer, where we get our especially now in our fall sports, where we gain a lot of the freshmen attention and understanding what we're trying to do and how to get in, what needs to be done to participate in sports. I am anticipating spring sports to be totally different than the alternate fall, just because of that reason, that we'll have some time. They'll be back in school. I'm anticipating our spring sports to be as normal.
Perfect. And then my final question is, thank you for including that brief update with clubs and organizations, and I'm glad to hear things are going well. I didn't hear mention of theater, and it's my understanding that they're back on the stage, so I just wanted to do a check-in. Are things going well? I think there was a puppet filming that was happening.
Yes, Mr. Wallendale had a big puppet show production, so it was kind of cool to see that. He told me not to release any pictures until he said that, and he let me know. But it was cool. They had the little green screen, and the student, he told me the specific suit that they had to wear, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, So they are definitely going, and I apologize for that. And they should be close to doing a final, if not already, a final video for that puppet show.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Just want to do a final check. Board Member Delgado, Board Member Jacobs, last call for questions for the athletic COVID-19 update. All right. I don't see any question marks. Mr. Beard, thank you so much for your passion, time, and energy. I appreciate it. I'm sure our students appreciate it. The only thing that I would really love to see for our next update is student feedback. So if we could get those ground-level stories of what this means for students, and especially how this is impacting their academics or things that we could improve on. I would love to share best practices, especially as we get ready to do a hybrid model for Term 4.
Sounds good. We do have a student that writes, it's called the scoreboard. It's a student athlete's perception of, just athletics. She just wrote an article about that. I will share that with you guys so that you can read that. We put that out maybe 2 weeks ago. She's a freshman. Her name's Sarah Ramsden. She does an outstanding job of writing and doing those things. So I will share her articles with you, and so you can get a little bit of that feedback. But I will definitely provide some student feedback for the next update.
Perfect. Mr. Beard, thank you so much. Thank you for shouting out Sarah. I look forward to reading her work. Dr. Kieser, are you all set for our update on academic engagement?
As soon as I turn on my microphone, yes. All right. So, want to provide a brief update on our student academic engagement. Just as a review, our academic engagement and attendance are in the time of COVID and distance learning are somewhat similar. And it's built upon guidance from the Department of Public Instruction, DPI, and are modeled after our multi-level systems of support, or MLSS model. So when we think about engagement, we think about full-day attendees, half-day attendees, and our students of concern. And so we've heard a lot about our students of concern and what are we doing to address those, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that in the update. But just in terms of how we are capturing these, when students are engaged for the majority, so 3/4 of the time or more consistently, we say that they are fully engaged or full-day attendees. Between 50 and 74% half-day, and if they don't achieve that half-time mark, we say that they are students of concern. Examples by which teachers are recording engagement/attendance. There's a list of these, and this list was derived and guidance came out in terms of the Department of Public Instruction to the school districts, and then we modified from there. So for us, Seesaw and Google Classrooms are our platforms for distance learning, so our records that are recorded within that, our evidence of daily work that students do, submissions of completed assignments, either where they're projects, modules, exams, whatnot. We also look at our system logins. Now that we have our updates to our Google platforms, whenever we have a Google Meets, it creates a log of who logged in during that time. And so we can use that as examples of engagement and who's checked in. Not only do we have weekly progress reports, but we also talk about all of our connections asynchronously with students. So whether it's through contacts, both digital, over the phone, face-to-face in some cases, as well as now that we have small group instruction and transitioning to in-person, the traditional when they are in the classroom, physically present. These are all examples of attendance and engagement. So we presented earlier on what was the state of the district in terms of the first term. And so when we think about our students of concern, at the elementary level, we were averaging about 13%, and that grew to about 20% when you got to the high school level. So we had a district average of about 17, a little over 17% students of concern. When you take a look at the end of our second term, so the end of the semester, you notice that the district average stayed relatively the same. However, you could see that we did better. We decreased the students of concern percentage at the elementary and intermediate level, but the high school, we had an increase. And so where you see the green in the changes, those represent a positive change. So an increase in our engagement, either half-time or full-time, and a decrease in our students of concern, where relatively our district average was almost identical. Now, we are approaching the last half of our third term, so we actually also have our midterm 3, so giving us a snapshot on the first half of this third term. Again, taking our term 2 and laying it side by side, and again, it's not quite the same because we're taking the first half of the third term, but you can see here, with all of our efforts on improving our engagement and trying to reduce our students of concern, we have slid back a little bit at the elementary level. We continue to do some improvements at the intermediate level, but our high school still continues to struggle. So where you see the improvement continuing at the intermediate level, you can see that we're starting to slide backwards a little bit. And I apologize, it should have said term 2 to midterm 3 changes on that last column. You can see that we're having a little backward slide. Transitioning to in-person is going to have an impact, and at this point, just to give context, we've had about 25% of our student population make a decision about coming back in person or remain in distance learning. And in that population, it's about an 80-20 split. 20% are remaining in distance learning, and 80% of families are having their students come back in person. So up to this time, and as we transition to in-person, how we've been addressing our students of concern. Everything under the sun. Our schools and our teacher teams and our student support teams have thought flexibly and responded based on whatever seems to connect our students back into the classroom. That included home visits, opening up distance learning support centers with our partnerships with the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, the library, Career Tech, and so forth. We've had the tech help desk at in our district as well as up at the library. Attendance phone calls and letters, materials distribution, teacher contacts, problem-solving teams, having our PBIS, our positive behavior intervention support, so having little incentives or challenges to see if we can get engagement up. Having our student intervention teams or our SIT teams problem solve. I'm having trouble having them show up to my class, but are they showing up to your class? What are you doing versus what am I doing? Having our student services team come together and think of interventions. Having our administrative team make connections and go out and do home visits, as well as having some limited interventions with our students with IEPs prior to our small group instruction, and now our small group support. What continues to be our list of barriers, even though we've been tackling access to the internet since the beginning of the school year, we still have students from time to time that internet becomes a barrier. We still have our Wi-Fi hotspots, and families do continue to reach out and ask for use of those hotspots. Connecting to the content. Sometimes the students can connect, but they don't understand what the content is, and so it becomes more nuanced where it needs to be a one-on-one contact helping the student. Understanding the material and the content, applications or demonstrations of learning. So they might understand the content, but they're having a hard time applying it to new and novel situations. As well as helping our students, because communication is different than it is in the building, how students are advocating for help and support. Sometimes students aren't they're asking for help, but they're not doing it in a way that there's a connection. And so helping our students work through that and then coming up with common language, as well as competing priorities and needs. We see that more often with our high school students, where we have students who have jobs and are balancing doing work in their schoolwork as well as working their jobs and earning an income. And so that, I will open up for questions.
Dr. Kieser, thank you so much. Committee members, go ahead and throw question marks in the chat. I have that open if you have questions. I do have a couple. The first is, thank you for clarifying that Google Meet, there is that login, so you can kind of use that for attendance. Is there any way, because I know some kids have issues with the link getting into class, does it capture attempted logins or just successful logins?
On the Google Meets, it actually captures when they log in. I don't believe that it captures attempted logins, but with Google Classroom, and actually I'm going to tap into, if she's on there still, Brandy Grady, with our Google Classroom specifically, that if they are engaged in that, we actually can see if they've been logged into that. Am I correct in that, Ms. Grady?
Yes, we can. The teachers can go in and see if the students have gone in and done anything or opened assignments or anything. That's all visible to the teachers.
And then as far as the Google Meets, does it capture attempted logins? I don't believe so, but I could be mistaken.
Not that I'm aware of. I think we only know if they're actually logging into Meets. It doesn't show attempts.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It looks like Board Member Delgado has a question. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Dr. Kieser, for the update. I have a question, and I'm not sure if you can answer this for me, but if an answer can be provided, it'd be great. What happens with the non-English speakers students that we have? How are they doing? How are they mingling through the virtual learning? Is there additional assistance that is provided to them, or I don't know if they're in some type of special program that provides Spanish or whatever their language is, instruction for virtual learning?
I can answer that in part, but I will follow up in terms of the content and interpretation. But I do know that with our supports and the investment in our homeschool liaisons, I know that in particular they have not only been helping our staff in engaging students, but they've been reaching directly out to students and families to help with engagement as well.
Thank you.
It looks like Board Member Jacobs has a question. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you for that report, Dr. Kieser. This is kind of going off of Board Member Delgado's question. I know in the past, and I'm sure if it's not happening currently, it will in the future, with our ELL staff, do we have anyone that's proficient in any other language besides Spanish?
Mm-hmm.
I do not know the answer to that question. I will follow up.
No,
Yep.
That's okay. I was just curious. And I'm sure that we have a way though that if we, for example, we had an Arabic speaking student, and we had someone on staff that actually knew, but there are avenues that we can to reach those children that we can reach out to, correct?
Yes, there are. Yes, there are. So to your original question in terms of staff proficient in other languages to support EL, I will follow up on that. But we do have systems and resources that we can leverage for helping to connect students who speak languages that we don't have staff that are proficient to help with that support.
And I guess, you know what, that's fine. You don't have to follow up with the other if we currently do. I just was curious to make sure that, we had avenues if we do. So thank you. You've got enough on your plate. Thanks.
Thank you.
And then Dr. Kieser, my final question. As I'm sure everyone else is concerned about those students of concern that you've listed where we've had limited to no contact. Has your team looked at, is there any crossover with either the meal pickup or meal delivery? And I know it could be challenging because the teacher knows who those students are that they haven't been in touch with, but I'm sure they're not the person who's passing out the meals. And I don't know if you check off, I am picking up meals for so-and-so. So I don't know how that process works, but is there any way to see if there's some crossover? Because that may be a way to connect with our kids that we haven't heard from.
I can look a little bit deeper. The way that we set up our meal pickup, we're not. It's different than it has been because it's a tally system. So any family with any child under the age of 18 can go to any location pick up. So it's like I need four meals, and they put 4 tally marks. So they're not capturing who specifically we're picking up for.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kieser. If there are no other questions from committee members, we're going to go ahead to number 3, finance, insurance, and contacts. And we'll start with the library iPad purchase. So it looks like that will be Ms. Grady. The floor is yours. Would you like questions as they come up or at the end?
At the end is fine.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to share. I have a proposal here that I will share on the screen. Okay, sorry, my computer's being slow. So I am here to request approval for purchase of 330 iPads to support our elementary, intermediate, and memorial in the library. We are moving to Chromebooks this school year, or for next school year, excuse me, and we have a lot of activities in our media classes, particularly at elementary and intermediate, that do use a tablet device. Some of our robotics activities we're incorporating into our media class, along with Osmos and some other of our makerspace type activities that do require a tablet. And it is also, I also want to have iPads available because not everything can be done in a Chromebook. And if classes or teachers want to do video projects or other things like that, that's really hard to do on a Chromebook. And so an iPad would make that easier. So these iPads would be for use in the media classes and then also available for checkout for classrooms as needed for depending on their curriculum and their needs. The BLA is not included on this just because they are in the process of putting together a makerspace. And so their needs are going to be a little bit different. So I'm working, as we work through that, then next year I will make some purchases for them specific to that.
So I have a couple questions. One, the iPads that are already in use, were those purchased by the district or was that a loan program? And if it was a loan program, is there any way we could get those upgraded to reinitiate that loan program instead of that purchase price that's a little large?
See, I don't know the specifics on that. That would have to come through tech. Joanne, do you know on that one?
I'm sorry, Board Member Levy, are you referring to the iPads that are with our students right now?
Correct. Were those purchased or are those on a lease?
The ones that we have assigned to students are between 6 and 7 years old, and so we do own those, and we're selling those back to Diamond Assets, but they're really not worth much of anything at this point because they won't hold charges, and that's why we're doing that process of it's a buyback after we finish the lease. So when the district has leased their iPads, there's always a $1 buyback basically at the end of the lease so that we can own them for $1.
Got it. And then my other question is, looking at this proposal, it seems like that there would be an iPad for every student. And if these are only going to be used as part of the media library and for classroom checkout, is there really the need to have one-to-one iPads if students will already have Chromebooks?
This is a set of 30 for each building. So it's one classroom set for each building. And I did forget to clarification. Okay. Yeah, and I did forget to mention at the beginning too that this will be coming from the Common School Funds purchase. I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning.
All right, committee members, Delgado and Jacobs, do you have any questions on the proposal?
I do, Board Member Levy.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you for that clarification, Ms. Grady, about the 30 per building. And then we use those are often used for testing purposes, yeah, correct?
Actually, most of our testing that we do in the district does work better on Chromebooks, so the students will be mostly testing on their Chromebooks.
Okay, so that would be like our math testing, the forward exam, all of that stuff?
Correct.
So I'm sorry for this question then, why, because it is a large sum of money, and I understand it comes out of the common school funds, but what is the benefit then for that? What do you use in the media?
In the media class, we have some robotics equipment that the software on it is an app that runs on an iPad that we have already purchased the robotics stuff from in the past. And we have a set of Osmos at every building, which is it's an interactive hands-on activity that has to use an iPad to work. And there's a few other things like that within the curriculum for the media class that require an iPad.
Okay, and
also on the other big benefit is everything we do can't be done on Chromebooks. And so like if a teacher in a classroom wants students to do an interactive project that includes making a movie or something like that, you can't really walk around with a Chromebook and take video footage.
That makes sense. Thank you for that clarification.
So would give them flexibility they can use in the classroom. You're welcome.
Okay, Committee Member Delgado, did you have a question for Ms. Grady?
Sure. Can you explain a little bit about the common school funds? You know, what is the difference? Is that just funds that are in there, or what's the difference?
Okay. So common school funds is how all of the library funding comes. It is from a fund through the state, and it's provided each year. We get a certain amount per student, and it's estimated early on, and then we get the actual numbers, I believe, in January usually for what the official number will be. And that money can only be spent in the libraries on library programming and services to support students through the library. And everything purchased with it has to remain as part of the library collection and checked out through the library. It can't purchase items that then would go and live in a classroom permanently. It can only purchase items that their permanent home would be the library.
Okay, and do those funds like transfer over like year by year, or do they go away if you don't use them?
Normally, you do have to spend them within the year. This year, we had a little extra money because due to COVID, we did roll over some of the money last year since we did not spend it all. But normally, it's for the year. And the more specifics of it, I don't know if Joanne, you want to jump in case I don't misspeak on any of that.
Yes, you are supposed to be spending all of those common school funds within the year. And when we do our annual report to DPI, if those funds are not spent, they are intended to revert back to the state.
Okay, and we do have that amount available in the common funds then to support this proposal?
Yes. This year, with not being in person and the libraries not being used, we didn't spend as much money on other things that we normally do in the library. So there's more money this year. So then we can do this year and then have the funds for other things next year.
Perfect. That explains a lot. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for those questions, Board Member Delgado. In case there was some misunderstandings from the audience at home who may have been listening to it that are not familiar with the Common School Fund. If there are no other questions,
excuse me, I'm sorry, Chairperson Levy. Ms. Grady?
Yes.
Have we actually met yet?
We met when you were summer school principal.
Oh, okay. Well, no, as a board member, because I didn't mean to be rude, and I just wanted to. Okay, thank you. Well, that was a little bit ago now. Okay. Well, good. Okay, and thank you for the presentation.
All right. I am ready to entertain a motion for the approval of purchase of the 330 iPads for the Media Center use on not to exceed $167,625. To move that on to the full board. And again, this is coming from the Common School Fund. which is for library use only.
I move to approve the proposal 21046 for 5203 of the use of $167,623.50 out of our common school funds to purchase our 330 iPads.
I second that.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, all committee members are in favor. There is no objection. That motion carries. Thank you so much. Next up, we will move on to budget revisions. Ms. LaPointe, the floor is yours.
Hi, this is Joanne. I apologize, but Ms. LaPointe will not be able to join us today due to a family emergency. So I am going to go through the presentation real quick with you. Okay, let me get my screen up. Okay, so what we are looking at now are the budget adjustments that Ms. LaPointe had put on the agenda for tonight. Usually in January, we will bring forward the budget adjustments that will include our grant expenditures and revenues once we have been provided our final numbers for grants. So when we adopted the budget in November, or the end of October, actually, we don't have the full amounts for our grants. So in the January revisions, we will equalize those out. So you'll see quite a few of our grants that we are receiving, including the Department of Justice Safety Grant, AGR, our Title I, II, and III allocations. So we had recorded another $2.3 million in revenues and expenses for those Fund 10 grants that we have coming into the district. We also see some budget revisions that we did, which was recording the Apple lease, our interfund transfer, and those additional common school funds that we needed to allocate and adjust based on our filing with DPI for the authorized budget. So they asked us to reclassify the principal on the lease for the Apple lease, and then the interfund transfer between Fund 27 and Fund 10. So we see truly a $709,000 revision with an additional $145,000 expense side. In Fund 27, we again adjusted due to the grants for flow-through and preschool as part of IDEA. So we have updated those amounts to show that revision in the January, amending that budget to $15,271,947. And then the final budget adjustment was for debt service. When we got the actual numbers of the debt refinancing, we had to adjust the journal entry for that. So you'll see a slight adjustment in our Fund 38 and 39, which is the referendum and non-referendum debt service that we have. So that is the summary sheet for the budget adjustments. If anyone is particularly interested, the second attachment is a line by line that will show all of those adjustments that we summarized in a format more that you can, it's more of the numbers on the DPI side that we're required to do. The summary sheet will give you actually the name of the grant and what we were doing as far as those adjustments. So at this point, I would take any questions that we have on the budget adjustments.
I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but thank you for providing the kind of executive summary and then the detailed information separately. I know for me that was helpful. Board members Delgado and Jacobs, any questions on our budget revisions?
I'm good.
And are the budget revisions okay.
I'm good too.
All right, thank you. Are these going to be reflected in the financial report?
Yes, when we do our financials, every time we do a budget adjustment or a revision, we have to publish it in the paper, give the notification, and then these will be what is in our final audited reports as our revised budgets, and we have to keep track of all these revisions that are board approved.
Sounds good, thank you. So it doesn't look like we have any other questions for the revisions. If we could go ahead and move into the financial reports for December 2020 and January 2021. Thank you again for being flexible. I know these have been bumped from a previous meeting.
Yep, no problem. I appreciate getting to them. I feel bad that we're trying to overload everybody with all the data at one time. So up on the screen now, you'll see the December 2020 financials. And as you see from this revenue, that is our equalization aid. And what the positive note on that is we were able to get through the low period where you always hear school districts are doing short-term cash borrowing because their aid doesn't come in at the same time as their payrolls and their regular expenses. A lot of districts will do short-term borrowing. We were able to capitalize on some of our investments and our not spending as much as we had been in the beginning, so we did not have to short-term borrow, which saved the district a lot of money on short-term borrowing, and we did get that equalization aid as scheduled without that. So that is the huge difference on why you see revenue so great in December's timeframe. Our debt service, these are showing our tax receivables as well. So when we get our payments from our tax, that's part of the defeasance that we've talked about when we were doing our budget adoption. That is why that revenue would be so high in that side. Other than that, these are pretty standard to the reports you get every month. So there's all the detail that we have done comparable. As we're looking through this, these are our revenues without grants, and you'll see that we seem to be trending very close to where we have been. If we come to the bottom for total revenues, we're at 34.98%, and last year at this time we were at 34.85%. So really trending as we would be expecting on our revenues for the operational funds. Okay. When we go into our expenditures with no grants, we've gotten our breakout. I find this very helpful for being able to compare one year to the next year. We seem to be trending very close. When you're looking at salaries, we're at 35.42%, whereas last year we were at 36.05%. Very similar in our benefits to our employees. When you get to your capitalized, non-capital assets, we're a little bit lower than we have been in the past with 28% compared to a 33%. Those would be considered very typical in those services. We do see the supplies down. I apologize, the first group I was talking about is purchase services. In our supplies, we do see that coming down from 35 when it was typically 42. I think that is a lot of our schools are not in session, so we have not been buying as many things in our buildings. And we are trending as normal with capital objects. Our debt retirement, of course, is in the same place. So overall, for our expenditures, we're going a little below what we were last year at 32% versus 34%. So all in all, I think we're doing a really good job at managing the money as we're trying to get through the pandemic and having all of our PPE and getting the information out to our students and buildings. The next group is our grants. Again, you saw the adjustments that we'll see in the January timeframe. We are trending very much on the same lines, little lower because we haven't had as many of those expenses on the revenues, and it's really a timing of when we do our claims. Okay. Okay. And when we start looking at our expenses, the biggest portion here that Ms. LaPointe asked me to point out for you is the gears and ESSER funds have not been expended to this point yet, so you're not seeing those expenses come through here on our technology. So when we've got the purchase order for the student device refresh for the Chromebooks, but because we haven't received them yet, that money hasn't been expended. So it is encumbered and will be spent, but you're not going to see it reflected in the financial reports as of yet. Are there any questions on the December financials?
I do have a quick question. It may apply to December and January. It looks like our expenditures are slightly down because we are not in session, but also balancing those additional expenses that are COVID-19 related. Do you have any concerns that once we transition to the hybrid cohort model, we'll still have those COVID-19 additional expenses, and we will, to some capacity, be back in buildings with those expenditures rising? What is your level of concern for that?
We're obviously concerned with the staffing side, but the majority of the PPE and the added expenses are for supplies and items that have already been purchased. So I would not expect that we're going to have a significant increase in those costs because those were costs, we have them in inventory. I don't know if that makes sense. So we bought the cleaning supplies and all of those PPE materials so that when we do come back, we have plenty in force, so we won't be buying additional. It is something that we're going to have to continue to monitor and look at as far as where we're spending it. And we have cautioned the schools that we definitely need to be sure that what we're purchasing for this fourth term is going to be in this year so that we try to keep our money in this year's fiscal year and do our next year's purchasing with next year's budget.
Sounds good. I don't see any question marks, so I think you're good to move on to the January financial report. Okay, so now we're back at January, and you see this revenue and expense kind of even out again. We don't have that influx of cash coming in as far as the equalization aid. This is typically more of what we see. We bring in less revenue and more of our expenses as we're using that equalization aid and our state aid payments. So I know we're limited on time, so I want to just kind of flow through this. I think we just kind of went through all of these items, so I'm going to kind of do a high level at looking where we are as far as revenues. We are pretty much on target with 35 and 35%. This is, again, without our grants included. So this is truly, when we talk about non-inclusive of grants, we want to make sure that the board and the public understands that's really our operational cost. Because if the grants went away, traditionally, we would have to look at the expenses that are incurred through that grant, that those may be things that go away as well. So we try to present this in the light that everyone can see what the district's true expenses are and revenue coming in. So as we continue to look through our expenses, we're at 42 and 43% comparatively. Benefits are trending where we are. We are keeping an eye on our health insurance costs just to, that is always a budget area that we want to look at what we're spending. We do seem to be at 43% on our insurance costs at this point versus last year at 42. So I do monitor that as a self-insured plan. We want to keep track of how we're trending in our health insurance. So it is something that we look at routinely. Again, we're down in our purchase services as far as we were at 32% versus 39%. A lot of that change too is that we went away from teachers on call. That would have been a purchase service expense last year. And again, we continue to see that decline in percentages for supplies as we haven't been in the school buildings. Okay, so overall, we're at 37.79% of our budget expended by the end of January, and the year prior it was 40%, so about 3% less than what we have done in the past. Okay. And then it goes through the grant side again, and we see this jump a little bit because we are doing those budget adjustments to get in trying to speak so fast to get out of here, I apologize. We are seeing that
those revenues are coming in as we set those grant amounts, and then continuing through as far as the expenditures. It's nice to see that the salaries and benefits are staying pretty much on point to where we expected. Our areas of unknowns, of course, are always our supplies and purchase services, which you'll see we would expect those to be down this year. So overall, we're about 7% less in expenditures than we were in the prior year out of our grant funds at this point.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Committee members, is there anything that you have questions about from either the presentation or your own personal review of the documents? Let's go ahead and take care of any questions now. Okay, I am not seeing none, so I am open to entertain a motion to recommend approval of the December and January, well, the December 2020 and January 2021 financial reports to the full board.
I make a motion to move the financial reports from December 2020 and the financial reports of January 2021 to the full board for approval.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, that is 3 ayes, so there's no objection. That motion carries. Dr. Kieser, let me check in with you real quick. I see that we do have one remaining item on the agenda, the summer 2021 early college credit application. Is that a time-sensitive item? Does that need to be approved? You are nodding yes. Okay. Board Member Jacobs, my apologies because we are creeping into your committee's time. We won't rush, but we will be efficient so we can get this handled. If we have Ms. Peltz on the line, the floor is yours, and we'll just go ahead and hold all questions till the end of your presentation, if that's okay.
That sounds great. Thank you, and good evening. This probably will be fairly simple. So here I am to present to you the applications for the Early College Credit Program, and not Start College Now, just Early College Credit Program for the summer. And so on the attachments, you will see that there are a series of requests made, some accepted, some denied, and the ask is to support the funding of the approved or the accepted courses that are listed on the attachment.
That was brief. And I know you explained this the last time you were here, but just refresh our memory. If something is not approved, the reason for that, if memory serves me correctly, is because there's a similar course that's offered within the building, et cetera. Are there other reasons why a course would be denied?
Nope. Typically, it is because we have a course that is comparable. And sometimes it's the exact same course. So there's actually 2 courses listed on here that are denied that we actually offer, in which the student can also receive the college credit. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. Yes. That $9,252 amount, that is accurate, right?
Mm-hmm. That is accurate, and that reflects the courses that would be accepted.
Perfect. So I am open to a motion to recommend to the full Board of Education the approval of the 2021 Summer Early College Credit Program, not to exceed $9,252.
I can make the motion, but I don't have the exact reading in front of me as I am currently driving right now.
No problem. Drive carefully. Since I stated it out, you could just use so moved if that works for you.
So moved.
Perfect. Thank you, Board Member Delgado. Board Member Jacobs, are you available for a second?
I am available for a second. I am sorry. Yes.
No problem. We have a motion and a second on the floor for the approval of the 2021 summer early college credit program applications in the amount not to exceed $9,252. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, there are 3 ayes, no objections. The motion carries. Thank you. And that brings us to the close of our meeting. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, April 13th, 2021, time to be determined. At this point, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Oh.
Second.
All right, thank you so much. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Great meeting, very productive. Take care.
All right, we're going to give Board Member Levy a moment, and then I will convene the next policy meeting.
Oh, you go right ahead, Board Member Jacobs.
Oh, you're right. Okay, I'm so sorry. Thank you, Board Member Levy. All right. It is 6:06, yes, p.m. And thank you, Board Member Levy, for watching out for our time. I appreciate that. And I'm going to call the Policy and Personnel meeting to order. Michelle, may I have roll call, please?
Levy,
Here.
Wong,
Here.
Jacobs.
Here.
All members are present with Wong in the boardroom.
May I have approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the agenda. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right. The agenda is approved. May I have approval of the February 23rd, 2021 minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of the February 23rd, 2021 minutes. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the February 23rd, 2021 minutes, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right. No opposed, so the motion of the minutes passes. And that brings us to our personnel items. And up tonight is approval of the employment recommendations, exhibits A and B.
I don't have any questions that will require us to go into closed session, but I do have a couple questions on Exhibit B. Thank you so much for including that additional information, but I still have the same concern. With the last pool in Exhibit B, the head football coach was making over 5 times more than the rest of the coaches that were in that batch. And with this new batch, it's still over 3 times more. I looked through that supporting information that was provided, and unless I'm missing something, the only things that stood out that would differentiate the head football coach position from other head coach positions was that extra responsibility of coordinating youth football with the AD. So that would be an additional responsibility extending outside of the students in the building. And then attend booster club meetings. I don't know if all coaches have that responsibility. I'm not really sure what the cadence is, so how much effort that takes, but those are 2 things that stood out. And I do understand that this candidate does have, it says 7+ years, but after further review, his documentation says 15+ years of experience. But other than those 2 things that I noted, it seems like the argument is because other boards have approved this And for me, that's just not a strong argument. So if there is something I am missing, I would love to have that information at this point.
Would anyone like to speak to that?
Ms. Williams?
Hi, good evening, everyone. So I'm sorry, Board Member Levy, can you clarify the question regarding the scope of the role?
No problem. So my original concern was the position of head football coach with the batch of recommendations that he was in on the 23rd. He was making over 5 times more than the next head coach. And I don't want to assume that that's an issue, but I requested more information to understand why there was that discrepancy with salary. And thank you again, whoever uploaded that. It was helpful, but as I was going through that, and it was mentioned on the 23rd that he had over 7 years of experience. As it turns out, it's 15 plus years. So that's fantastic. But what I am looking at, if there's that much of a difference in stipends for a head coach position, I want to be able to justify that by saying, oh, well, that makes sense because this person is doing items 1 through 10 that the other head coaches are not, and that's why this makes sense. The only 2 things, and add to the list if there are things that I missed, that seem different from the responsibilities of other head coaches was, like I said, to coordinate the youth football program, which would extend beyond the building of Beloit Memorial. So I think that is definitely something that other coaches, unless I'm wrong, are not being asked to do. And then attend booster club meetings. I don't know if that is an expectation of all coaches or just specific to the head football coach. And then the other kind of criteria to support this pay difference was that it had been similar amounts had been approved by past boards. And for me, that's just not a strong enough argument because someone else did it, we should do it. So if there is something that I'm missing, like, no, Amy, this person does this, this, and this, and that's why there's the discrepancy, that's the information I would love to hear.
So what I can speak to is that when all the work was done and they looked at the roles for coaches, that work had been done stemming back to 2013. And it was under that administration at that time when they did all of that work with addendums and defined what the salaries were for each of the coaches and then broke that down by whatever level of experience that they had. So when we did the little bit of homework that we did in regards to this recommendation, we pulled what those past coaches were making in the level of experience that they had. So I wanted to at least provide some context behind that. In regards to the scope of the role and the job description for each of those coaches, I would have to look and see. And I'm sorry, we didn't upload those documents because they didn't know that there were other coaching positions in question in terms of like what the role and responsibilities were. And I'm happy we can gather that for you. So I think we really wanted to at least provide the context that the last 3 coaches have made that amount and had the same level of experience. So that way we could get the program moving and, the board rec could be approved. So I'll go back and grab some of those roles and responsibilities and provide that for you so you have that background as well. But I can tell you that all of that work on those addendums, that was done way back in, I think, like 2013. And I know Ms. Armstrong and her budget committee group will be working on some of that addendum work moving forward.
Dr. Kieser, I see you texted your policy and personnel. I'm sorry, I don't understand.
No, I was just putting a break in the chat so that for archiving.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Dr. Kieser. Board Member Wong?
Mrs. Williams, would it be possible at all for us to get an idea of not just the history of this position, but perhaps even some of the other head coach positions. I don't know if it's possible. I'm guessing that should be pretty easy to pull together, not only within our district, but maybe if there would be a way to get samples of other districts in the area as far as their positions in those specific areas, whether it be the head football coach. I'm guessing that information is publicly available.
Yeah, we can reach out. A lot of times when we're pulling comparables from area districts, we network with other HR departments and other districts. So yeah, we can gather some data on that.
I think that would be helpful from my standpoint, just to say, okay, yes, I mean, I would agree that yes, just because we paid it in the past doesn't mean we have to pay it going forward. If it's a hard to fill position, or if there is additional time and commitment on that, I can certainly justify that as well. But yeah, if there's comparables in the area that we can look at, or even within our conference, I think that would be beneficial to look at. And then also looking at other coaching positions as well.
So just to add on to, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. So just to add on to Board Member Wong's request, I think the comparables are great, but for me, I just want to make sure that we are being equitable within our district to our coaches. And again, I am not an expert on high school head football coach positions. So if there's like 10 things that this role does that other coaches are not expected to do that justifies that difference in price, then that might make sense. So if we could have kind of an understanding of what the expectations of all of our head coaches are, and overlay that with the stipends that they are being paid, that would be helpful for me.
Okay. All right, so I'm hearing that we still have some more information we'd like in regard to the head football coach. With that conversation being had, yes.
Sorry, Board Member Jacobs. Just wanted to provide a little context, and then also let the committee know that Mr. Beard has joined so that he could provide some context. And in part, and I apologize if I missed this in the explanation, so the salary schedule that was created, as Ms. Williams had shared, for the coaching positions is one that had started back in 14-15, or had last been amended in 14-15. I know Mr. Beard, as part of his role as Athletics and Activities Director, does want to and look at updating those pieces. So while Mr. Beard doesn't have a new updated salary schedule that he's ready to present or to amend our current one, he could speak to some of the questions that Board Member Levy and Board Member Wong had asked about in terms of comparables and roles and responsibilities. If the committee would like for him to share that briefly.
Members?
I mean, I don't want to put Mr. Beard on the spot if he wasn't prepared to have that discussion, and I would like for it to be a thorough discussion across head coaches' positions. So my preference would be to get that scheduled for our next meeting and have everything laid out. Yeah.
Thank you, Board Member Wong.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think it would be much better if it was a more formal presentation versus an off-the-cuff one. I'm assuming, Mr. Beard, you had some comments to make, but I think that if there's some sort of presentation, it would not only do the committee a favor, but also I think the community as a whole.
Thank you. And Mr. Beard, thank you for your willingness to pop back in so quickly. That was very kind of you.
No worry at all.
Okay, thank you. And we look forward to hearing a formal presentation soon. Thanks again.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, so we'll have that to look forward to and get more, as I said, formal presentation. Does anyone have any other questions or discussion about anything else regarding the employment recs? Are we ready for a motion?
I move approval of Employee Recs A as presented and Employee Recs B with the omission of the head football coach position.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussions? All right, hearing none, all in favor of employee recommendation? I'm sorry, I was muted the whole time. Let me try this again. All right, we have a motion and a second for approval of the employment recs exhibits A and B with the removal of the head football position. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, please, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, none are opposing, so the motion passes. Thank you. And of course, I just lost my screen. So I could use a little help, please, on what is next because it's totally gone. Next on our agenda.
No problem. The next item on the agenda would be moving to policy, and the first one would be policy 723.41, school opening, reopening during a public health crisis.
Thank you, Dr. Kieser. All right. Would anyone, Board Member Levy, I see you're unmuted. Would you like to say something while I'm trying to get my computer screen up?
No, I was actually accidentally unmuted.
Oh!
Great to see Attorney Love, and I am sure she is going to walk us through this policy and this Rule 1 if needed.
Yes, please, Ms. Love. Welcome.
You're muted.
Whoops, you're muted, Ms. Love.
I'm there.
There you go.
Okay. So the first policy that I've got up here is 723.41. My recollection was we discussed this or began to discuss it last time, but I could be confused. And essentially, this policy starts out by saying the superintendent shall develop a plan for board approval. And because that's the policy, I think what has been stricken from this policy you don't need because you're going to have a plan that's going to be addressed. So the policy is that there will be a plan that will be developed by the superintendent.
Board members, any comments or questions? I am still madly trying to get my computer to work. Are we ready for a motion?
So I just have a question. I just have the policy pulled up and not the Rule 1. Attorney Love, what is your recommendation to collapse anything that we may need in Rule 1? I know that Dr. Kieser had asked for the authority to reopen a building that had been temporarily closed because of staffing shortages or a localized outbreak. Would it be appropriate to include that in that policy and kind of do away with the Rule 1? What is your advice?
I mean, you could certainly do that. I think in some of the other policies that we've looked at, it gets confusing if you have policies that cover the same subject matter and you've got a policy and you've got a Rule 1. And so you have to look at both of them to decide what it is you really have to do. So if in fact this Rule 1 steps are not currently addressed with the language in the policy about the superintendent submitting a plan, then I think I would eliminate Rule 1 and I would put those the elements of Rule 1 that are still in there in the policy itself.
Thank you, Attorney Love. Board Member Levy?
So just a couple things for some clarification. I would really like to hear feedback from Dr. Kieser if you want those two scenarios covered in policy. But just before we get to that, to clarify on and I love streamlining it. I am a fan of efficiency and to the point. That second paragraph where it talks about in certain circumstances the superintendent could close like a particular building, et cetera. But then the reopening of those buildings, unless we outline it in policy, would defer back to the board. Is that accurate, Attorney Love?
Well, as I read it, as it's currently drafted, it sets forth in Rule 1 under what circumstances the superintendent can reopen. And that doesn't call for revisiting this with the board. I mean, it says, and one of them I'm looking at, reopened by the superintendent if the closure was directed by a public health entity for a specific period of time or if there's staff shortages. So under those circumstances, this policy gives that authority to the superintendent by policy without taking it back to the board.
No, and I'm completely in favor of that. But that second portion, not of the rule, because it sounds like your advice to us is to put the rule in the policy and don't worry about the rule, just have a one-stop shop, if I'm hearing you correctly. But no, that second paragraph says in certain circumstances, the decision may be made by the superintendent to close a particular building. I'm totally on board with that. It doesn't say anything about the reopening in that specific situation. So in my thinking, that would defer coming back to the board unless we make that clear in that second paragraph. So that's what I was looking for guidance of.
Okay. So, but if you're moving the reopening language from Rule 1 into the policy itself, doesn't that address that? Because it talks about when schools can be reopened.
Ms. Love, and this is the conversation that Board Member Levy and I, we're approaching the same endpoint, but from different perspectives. So, where if we move the information from Rule 1 into the policy, that's one approach, and alternatively, that first line where it says there's a plan, if that plan contains the authority that the superintendent is asking for and the board approves that plan, that alternatively could give that. So while not explicitly in policy, absent a plan, I absolutely am in agreement with Board Member Levy that the default is back to the board unless the board were through motion and approval of that motion gives limited authority to the superintendent within the plan that's presented.
Thank you, Dr. Kieser. Board Member Levy?
So I have a recommendation and then a comment. My recommendation is, Secretary Shope, could you go ahead and transfer what is in Rule 1 to the policy so we can kind of see all of it together and then possibly share your screen? And then my concern is when I think about policy, I don't like to look at a particular person as superintendent. For example, I think the authorities that you're requesting, Dr. Kieser, are wholly appropriate to reopen if there's a localized outbreak or there's a teacher shortage. And so I want that vested in policy, because if we have a different superintendent and I just don't want the authority to be dependent on a plan. I want it to be laid out in policy so we don't have to think about that anymore, especially since we went through the trouble to come up with, a public health crisis policy. I just think that that's something that should be included.
Yeah. Yes. And that in part why I agree with you, and in part why we brought it back here so that we could have that conversation and see what makes the best sense for us moving forward. So I don't know if Ms. Love has thought or perspective, and we're also in part giving Ms. Shope some time to copy everything over. So,
Ms. Love?
Well, so what I'm hearing you say is that rather than say the superintendent will develop a plan. So your policy is not going to be that the superintendent will develop a plan for board approval for the opening and reopening of schools, but you want that actual plan to be this policy.
No, not at all. I definitely want a plan that comes to the board, but the authority, so the board decides. We've been closed for a year. It's the board's decision when we reopen, okay? Now that we have reopened, if we need to shut down, not for a year or anything like that, but like for a few days, for 10 days, for whatever the guidance from the local health department is, I don't think Dr. Kieser or whoever the superintendent is should have to come back to the board and say, okay, can we reopen again? Like once we are open, I think it's wholly appropriate that the superintendent should be able to determine, okay, we're going to close down this building for 10 days, and then we're going to reopen. We're going to close down this building for a day because it's a staffing shortage, and then we're going to reopen. And I just want that kind of solidified in policy. But we still want, God forbid we have to close down again, we still want a plan. We still want that plan approved. But the authority of opening and kind of think of it as a major reopening and a minor reopening. That major reopening should be a board call. Any of those minor reopenings, like in the athletics, there's that we were down for a day. We were down for a few days. I don't think that should have to come back to the board, and that's why I want that in policy.
Okay, and so I'm going to apologize because and you don't think that if we move the rule, schools reopened and district reopened, that doesn't accomplish that?
No, that's why I was asking Secretary Shope to move that rule to the policy so we can see how it all looks.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I'm just waiting on that, but it seems like that should be good.
Right. I agree.
Thank you, everyone. Board Member Wong, before I ask if Ms. Shope is ready, did you have anything like that?
No, I think that makes sense. I think that to have, if we refer to it as a major reopening and minor reopening, and I'm not in agreement that the superintendent should have to come back if it's for a smaller reopening of the schools after it's been closed. That should be their responsibility. Otherwise, I think we're getting too deep in the weeds as a board.
And I agree. Ms. Shope, are you ready?
I have it all done. I just can't present right now because my computer locked up and I'm trying to get it to unlock. So I will be ready in just a moment.
No, that's fine. I'm understanding all about computer issues tonight. Just let us know when you're ready.
So while she's moving that, maybe I can address the comment that I had added to this policy. And this is on the Rule 1.
Yes, please.
it's currently drafted, it says that the administrator, that the district administrator may still require administrators and staff to report to work from an appropriate alternate location. And when I read that, to me, it's you don't need that, because if you're saying that the administrator can require the administrator and staff to report to work, the order would be you report to work at your normal work location, even though the district might be closed down, or at an alternate location. So my concern is that that's too confining, and you don't really need it, because you just say that they're required to report for work. And if they're required to report for work and it's going to be at an alternate location, they'll be informed of that. And you don't need to include that in the policy. That was just my comment on those two phrases that I deleted.
Thank you, Attorney Love. I thought I saw Ms. Stroke come back, but perhaps not. Ms. Stroke, could you please read that? I am afraid it's too tiny for me.
So after the first two paragraphs of the actual policy, I just inserted the entire rule. Although I'm not sure if you need the first part that says, should a public health crisis require a district as a whole or an individual school or schools to close and reopen at a later time, the following procedures shall occur. And then schools reopened. Schools may be reopened by the superintendent if the closure has been directed by a public health entity for a specific period of time, or in the event that there is not enough staff to operate the schools whenever the public health crisis is deemed safe or able to be managed. When schools are reopened, all administrators and staff are expected to report to work as directed by the superintendent. If schools are partially closed, the district administrator may still require administrators and staff to report to work from an appropriate alternate location, and that portion from an appropriate alternate location is what Attorney Love has recommended is not needed. And then the next section is district reopened, and it says the exact
Ms.
same
Schultz,
thing.
sorry. There was a strike for the whenever a public health crisis is deemed safe and able to be managed.
Okay. That didn't carry over when I copied it then.
No, yeah, none of the edits carried over. So there's parts that were edited.
Okay. So the district reopened would say the exact same thing, and again, the strikeout that Dr. Kieser just mentioned would be there, as well as the from an appropriate alternate location would be struck out.
Then the next paragraph. Next two paragraphs.
Are those in full, or were there strikeouts?
In full.
Okay. Employees are directed to work the number of days included in their contract unless on approved leave.
That's all stricken.
Oh, that's all stricken?
That's all stricken. You go to the last paragraph.
Upon reaching a decision to reopen schools following a public health crisis, the superintendent shall notify the board parents, place an announcement on the district website and other media outlets. Notice of reopening should be given as far in advance as practicable.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Schultz. All right. Board Member Levy, is that a question you had?
Yeah, it is. That second paragraph of the original policy, it says, in certain circumstances, the decision may be made by the superintendent. Since including the rule would outline those certain circumstances, how do we feel about getting rid of that and just going to what I deem is kind of the meat of that, where it talks about and offer the alternative form of education to certain students, etc. So instead of keeping it general and say in certain circumstances, the part B of that, could we add, because the certain circumstances are listed?
Board Member Levy, so you're saying in the second paragraph, edit from there, or are you saying should the public health crisis require the district as a whole or individual school piece?
Okay, so that should the public health crisis, I think we can get rid of that because that's what the whole policy is for. So you only crack in case of emergency, we're already there. So I think we can omit that. But instead of that second paragraph that says in certain circumstances, because that's very broad, and then when we go down into the information that was contained in the rule, it says schools may be reopened by the superintendent if the closure, like it gives those detailed examples of when you would have the authority to reopen. So if we could omit that first part and include it down in the rule, if that makes sense. So when you talk about alternative forms of education, include that with your authority to reopen. Like if we need to close, you'll decide that, and while we are closed, these things will occur.
Board Member Wong, do you have any thoughts? Or Dr. Kieser? Or Attorney Love?
Yeah. From what you just said, Board Member Levy, at the end in terms of separating out the closure and then the opening, I do believe that from my reading, it seems like that second paragraph talks about the closing. So in the certain circumstances, so I agree with you. We could say in circumstances where closure is due to localized outbreak or staffing, the decision may be made by the superintendent to close a particular building. And then if we eliminate that nebulous, should the public health crisis out, then it naturally flows because then it goes into the school reopening and then the district reopening.
Yes, I like that.
Board Member Wong, do you have any comments?
No, that works for me.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Love?
That looks fine.
All right. Okay, I think we've reached consensus. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Can we get that cleaned up so we can see it?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Ms. Shope, I know you're having some technical difficulties. Do you think you can clean that up?
Sure.
Thank you. And then when you're ready, let us know.
Sure.
Thanks. Working on that, I feel like as committee chairperson, I should do some entertainment of some sort. But
I don't have entertainment, but I do have a quick question. I know the original policy, it kind of outlined athletics curricular, and now that that's omitted, I just wanted to do a check-in with the committee to make sure that, one, that was our intention, or even if it wasn't, we're fine with not addressing athletics and extracurriculars in this policy.
Board Member Wong?
I guess I'm fine in not including it, just because I guess the expectation would be that in the plan itself, that it would be outlined there in greater detail.
And I agree.
Unless, now that I'm looking at that first sentence.
No, Board Member Levy, no.
Yes, Chair Jacobs, yes. The superintendent shall develop a plan for board approval regarding when to open or reopen schools, and when to restart athletics and extracurriculars, because that is the way it has happened. I think it's a minor edit, but it would include, so there's no confusion about, well, who handles sports and extracurriculars, that we're going to follow our same plan.
Okay, Board Member Wong?
That's fine. I mean, it certainly addresses that as something outside of the school itself. I think that once again, if we need to include that just to make sure it's very clear, I'm okay with that. I just continue to go back to the plan itself, but I can see the potential rationale for
Okay.
the separation.
Yeah. Yeah, and since that is how it has happened, I would assume it very well could happen that way again. Hopefully we'll never have to use this again, but. All right, I'll let you continue, Ms. Shope.
All right, I think we got it edited.
Awesome. All right, Ms. Shope, would the committee like Ms. Shope to read it in its entirety? All right, please go ahead, Ms. Shope.
Okay. The superintendent shall develop a plan for board approval regarding when to open or reopen schools during a public health crisis, including but not limited to a disease outbreak or credible threat to the health and safety of the school body and community. This includes, but is not limited to, what programs will be offered outside the required educational offerings and any special restrictions within district programming. In situations of localized outbreak or staffing, the decision may be made by the superintendent to close particular buildings and offer an alternative form of education to certain students or certain buildings rather than close the whole district. This decision may also be made on the basis of factors including but not limited to student age, site of the health crisis, or the ability of particular student populations to maintain safety and abide by health guidelines. Schools reopened. Schools may be reopened by the superintendent if the closure has been directed by a public health entity for a specific period of time, or in the event that there is not enough staff to operate the schools. When schools are reopened, all administrators and staff are expected to report to work as directed by the superintendent. If schools are partially closed, the district administrator may still require administrators and staff to report to work. District reopened. The district may be reopened by the superintendent if the closure has been directed by a public health entity for a specific period of time, or in the event that there is not enough staff to operate the district. When the district is reopened, all staff shall report as directed by the superintendent. If the district is partially closed, the district administrator may still require administrators and staff to report to work.
Thank you, Ms. Shope.
There's one more sentence. Upon reaching a decision to reopen schools following a public health crisis, the superintendent shall notify the board, parents, place an announcement on the district website and other media outlets. Notice of reopening should be given as far in advance as practical.
Do we still need to add the language in about athletics and extracurricular at the very beginning.
Ms. Schulp, I assume that's what you're doing?
No, I'm not sure what I'm
I think
supposed to be adding.
they were busy editing it when we were talking about that. I believe it is after, in the first sentence there, the superintendent shall develop a plan for board approval regarding when to open or reopen schools, and
I would say or start or resume athletics and extracurriculars.
Is it all right if I say extracurricular activities?
It's fine with me. I think Board Member Levy nodded. I don't see Board Member Wong.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Committee members. Do we have something we're ready to approve?
move approval as revised.
Do I hear a second?
Friendly amendment for policy 723.41. And if that is accepted, then I second.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second with the friendly amendment to approve. Oh, not again. Oh. Well, now it would be to approve policy 723.41, correct? Or, yeah. Or we still say Rule 1, Attorney Love.
No, Rule 1 has been incorporated.
Or separate, right. So then it would be policy 723, thank you, Attorney Love. Policy 723.41, school opening / reopening during a public health crisis. First reading to the full board. Okay, thank you, everyone. So we have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? All those all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, and there are none opposed, so it has passed unanimously, and this will go to the full board this evening. Thank you, everybody, for ironing all of this out. And Ms. Stroke, thank you in particular for your quick edits. All right, now we are at letter C, policy 522.6, employee anti-harassment. There we go. All right. Okay, Board Member Levy, did you want to make any comments on your comments?
Hold on, I'm pulling them up.
No, it's okay. And Ms. Love, I don't see any, or was that in red? No, that says Amy also.
There were a couple of attorney edits, but I think some of the things, for example, in that second paragraph, it says this sentence is confusing and unnecessarily long.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because it incorporates all of the protected classes. And if you wanted to streamline that, you could modify it to say the board will vigorously enforce its prohibition against harassment based on protected class as recognized by state or federal law, or state and federal law. But if you do that, then we need to ensure that the list of protected classes is incorporated in the handbook so that employees know what bases are covered under this. So if you want, you don't need to include them all here in the general policy. You can just reference state and federal law. But in the policy or in the handbook, you want to specify what those protected classes are.
With that new information, I retract my sentence about it's unnecessarily long, because I would rather include it here in policy than, again, link it to the handbook that we don't have any control over.
But if in this policy you're saying by state or federal law, then the handbook has to adopt those things. I mean, it's not like they have discretion to not incorporate all of those. But that, you can keep it in the policy. That's why I think it was originally in the policy.
Okay. Board Member Wong, do you have any feelings one way or the other?
I mean, if we make it simpler, as Attorney Love has indicated there, that is also going to assist with any changes in the future. We don't have to go in and revise the policy then. I mean, we would have to revise the handbook that would reference the language in the state or federal rules or laws.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then if I could go on to the rest of after you have the list of all of the protected classes, then you have a sentence that talks about the hostile work environment, and that's fine. The harassment may occur employee to employee, employee to student, student to employee, and so on. That could be omitted. I mean, it's as a policy, you don't need to incorporate that because that's what the law says. That it's based on membership in a protected class, and so by that nature, that means that it prohibits harassment under any of these relationships. You don't need that sentence in there.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Love. And I must apologize, folks, because I just jumped right into this without looking at the time. And I know none of us want to rush through any of these policies because they're all very important. I would suggest it is 6:58. I would make the suggestion that we can either finish up with this policy or we could resume it at our next meeting along with the others. Thoughts, board members?
I would be inclined to resume at our next meeting.
Okay. Board Member Wong?
Can we get through this policy and finish this one up first and then postpone everything else after that? I mean, if we're...
You okay with that, Board Member Levy?
Sure.
All right, let's finish this one up and then we'll go on to the regular board meeting. All right, so Attorney Love, so then we're going to make changes in the wording in paragraph 2, correct? And board members nod or yes or no if I'm incorrect here, please. And then Board Member Levy, where the paragraph, the board will investigate all allegations of harassment, etc. This is not happening within the board. Did you want to
clarify?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So I think that we should be specific about if a formal complaint process has been launched or whatever the verbiage is around that, because if someone comes to us and says, hey, I'm being harassed, that doesn't mean that the board is going to launch an investigation. So I just want to be clear that people understand what the process is. So the board will investigate whatever formal process triggers that investigation. I think our language should be specific so people are clear.
Do you have any suggestions? I guess for me, when it says it's substantiated, but do you have different wording that you'd like there?
I mean, I wouldn't want to guess at it. What is the policy for like a formal complaint? What initiates a formal complaint? What things have to be done? And then if we reference that here, so once a formal complaint is launched, the board will investigate.
Okay. Attorney Love, with your wordsmithing, do you have any ideas for us?
And I believe this is that there is a complaint process that has been adopted in handling discrimination complaints. So what you could do is say the board will investigate all allegations of harassment in accordance with, and then reference the policy on investigations.
And I'm go ahead, Attorney Love.
And then the rest of it would stay the same.
And then at the bottom, when it says complaint and investigation, complaints and investigations shall be handled as provided in Board Policy 511, affirmative action and EEO. Is that separate or is that the same?
Okay, so that's the reference to the investigation.
Okay, I'm sorry, Board Member Levy?
No, my bad. I didn't do the question mark. Just to know, we still haven't revamped our affirmative action policy. Remember, we postponed that until we work with Zambia. So just keep that in mind when we're referencing a policy that still hasn't been addressed.
Until a policy is addressed, it's still in force based on how it's currently written. So while it's still being updated, it's the policy as written is still in effect.
Dr. Kieser, is it possible to discuss, and I'm just throwing it out there, since they're connected, is it possible to do both of them in tandem at the next meeting? I know we decided we were going to get through this, but I'm just throwing another wrench in here. Or what does everyone think?
The policy is currently with the Cambio group, and so they are in the process of providing their feedback to us. So as soon as I get back from them, I can bring it back to the committee.
Okay. So committee, keep going through this one and get through it tonight? Yay or nay? Nay. Board Member Levy's shaking her head. Board Member Wong?
Yeah, I would say we just postpone it. I mean, considering if we're going to go through a policy that this is tied to, let's just push it off to a later date.
I agree. Dr. Kieser, do we have any idea when the Cambrio group will get back to us?
It's only been with them for about a week and a half because it didn't get to them until after winter break, and we had a postponement on their end, so it delayed them getting started.
Do you have any idea how long it generally takes? I don't know.
No, because this is our first time working with the group, and they are going through and taking their deliberations. But just to say, like, all policies, even while in revision, are in effect. They only take effect once they've gotten through the committee and to full board actions. So even if we refer back to a policy that we know we're going to take actions on, we still can do that work. It doesn't have to be done in tandem. We just, as a committee, we need to know that we're referring back to a policy and make note of what are the changes in that policy that we want to have happen when we get to that policy.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. After hearing that, board members Levy and Wong, do you still feel the same, that we should wait?
I do. I wouldn't be comfortable with spending time investing in a policy that's linked to another policy that we're pretty sure is going to have some changes.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, so am I. But thank you, Dr. Kieser, for the explanation. So we will come back to this at a later date. And we've had a great meeting, but I do believe we are now, 5 minutes behind. And we do have a next meeting date on Tuesday, March 23rd, time to be announced. So unless there's anything else, we are now at adjournment. But before that, thank you again, Attorney Love. You are a delight to work with.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? So all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right, good evening, everybody. It is 7:07, and I would like at this time to call our regular board meeting to order at this time. Ms. Schopp, may we please have a roll call?
Jacobs,
Here.
Levy,
Here.
Wong,
Here.
Delgado,
Here.
Anderson,
Here.
Miller.
Present.
All members are present with Wong and Miller in the boardroom.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schopp. Before I ask for a motion to approve the agenda, I'd like to ask our committee chairs if there are any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda, although Dr. Kieser did just hand me some notes, but I'll ask anyway. Board Member Levy, is there anything that needs to come off from Oversight at this time in the consent agenda?
No, nothing that needs to come off, and this can be addressed at a later date, but I just did want to give a heads up. We were able to complete the budget revisions in the financial report for 2020 and January 2021, and I don't see those on the consent agenda. So since they're not there, we'll have to address it at the next meeting, but just wanted to make note of that to make sure that they do appear at the next meeting.
Thank you very much for that information, Board Member Levy. Board Member Jacobs, are you okay with us removing policy from the consent agenda, items 4E through 4P? That would encompass E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, and P. Does that match your notes, Board Member Jacobs?
Oh, I'm sorry, I have muted the entire time. Yes, that's correct, and thank you, Dr. Kieser, for providing that to Board President Miller.
The only piece would be to look and see if there were any that were approved at the committee meeting that I missed, so.
The second reading.
Oh,
I'm looking again. Committee members, I think we,
So just to quickly interject, it looks like what I'm looking for is a motion to approve the agenda without items 4E through 4K. Everything else for policy is a second reading, so those can stay on our consent agenda. So I'll just repeat that. If anybody would like to make a motion to approve the agenda absent items 4E through 4K.
I move to approve the agenda with the exclusion of items 4E through 4K.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and I noticed that Ms. Beavers put something in the chat box. Ms. Beavers, did you have a comment that you wanted to offer?
I just wanted to clarify that seclusion and restraint was a second reading.
Okay, and which agenda? Here, let me just pull up my copy real quick.
it's included. It's L.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much for verifying that, Ms. Beavers. I really appreciate it. So at this time, we have a motion and a second. Is there anything else that anybody would like to modify in the agenda or any other discussion? Board Member Levy?
Thank you. I just want to scroll down. I would like to postpone item 6B because it's my understanding that we just got that presentation yesterday around 7 p.m. And it says that there may be action taken, and I'm not comfortable with taking action on a lengthy document that we just received last evening.
Board Member Levy, would you be open to having the presentation with no action?
That would be fine.
Okay, I'm not sure that we need to adjust anything at this time then, but we'll note that, and that's what we'll follow through with then in our executive session, if that works for everybody. Is there any other discussion?
No, I was just going to say, just if we did not put that it potentially could be an action item, it would not be available if the discussion led that direction.
Thank you very much for the clarification. Board Member Anderson, you're unmuted. Did you have anything?
I don't believe I was unmuted.
That's all right. So I think if there's no other discussion, we have a motion and a second.
I'm so sorry, President Miller. I do.
No, go ahead, please, Board Member Jacobs.
Oh, actually, go ahead and say what you were saying because, wait, no, this is discussion now. So we are going to, I just want to be clear. So we're going to have the presentation, but no action will be taken tonight. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Can I interject?
Oh,
just
please do. Go right ahead.
Board Member Jacobs, the presentation will be had, and during the discussion, the board can make the determination whether they want to take action or not. It's not a predetermined yes or no. It's just an option available for the discussion.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Dr. Kieser, because I feel Board President Miller much the same as Board Member Levy, that at this late date, I would like more time to look at it and to ask questions beforehand so as not to be the most efficient as we can as a board during a board meeting.
I appreciate that. I see Board Member Levy has a question in the chat, and then after that, I think any other discussion after Board Member Levy's comments, I think we can probably postpone until that item. Board Member Levy, go ahead, please.
All right, so I actually have changed my mind. I am of the position, I don't want to have the presentation twice. And like I said, since we just got that packet, I think like 7:05 last night, I am now questioning if it makes sense to go through the performative act of having the presentation when I know I haven't had a chance to delve into it because I've been at work all day. It may be a better use of time to postpone the presentation until we can digest it, have the presentation, and take action if needed.
I have a question for Dr. Kieser. If we were to remove that discussion item, so we for sure just wouldn't address it, if we leave the item on the agenda, is that something where in executive session we could decide to postpone? Or for the purposes of being transparent with open meetings, should we remove that now if we think that that's going to happen?
The only concern is that the subject of the discussion is of a time-sensitive nature, and so it's if the board removes it, there is a small window, but it is a time-sensitive topic. So.
All right. It sounds to me like this is something that we can discuss. If we leave it on the agenda, we can make determinations as needed in executive session. So at this time, it looks like there's a motion that's been seconded to approve the agenda, removing items 4G, H, I, J, and K. And I think at this time, while it's not determined at this point, we're going to leave, and I can't remember, is it 6B? Board members, I want to just double check. Yeah. We'll leave item 6B on there, but we can have this discussion in executive session if that's okay, and if it's not, you can vote. So at this time, all in favor of approving the agenda as moved, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, are there any opposed?
Nay.
Thank you very much. All right, motion passes 5-1. And at this time, let me just take a look here. It looks like we are ready to stand for the pledge. Board Member Wong is going to lead us in the pledge this evening.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. At this time, we are on 2A for public comment. Ms. Shope, are there any public comments that have been submitted by email at this time?
There are not.
Okay, is anybody present this evening wishing to comment?
There is not.
All right, thank you very much. That takes us to item 3A, which is the Superintendent Board Report. Dr. Kieser, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So as we work towards our public relations and promoting our district, I am taking the opportunity to, for the Superintendent's Board Report, to introduce Ms. Christopa, who has worked with several of our staff in producing a district video that will be used to promote our district, not only within the district, but across our community and beyond. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Christopa.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Kieser, for that intro. Tonight, Marie and I are here to share with you a video that is an overview of our district and all our benefits. This is part of a comprehensive marketing and public relations plan that was initiated in September of last year. And this public relations and marketing plan included the introduction of an app, which has been up and running since then, the creation of a blog that we collaborate with community members, our weekly podcast, which start in 2 weeks, and a stakeholder newsletter, along with very positive social media campaigns that have been run. So please know that this video, along with others that we're planning this year, will continue to market our brand. It's part of a comprehensive plan of creating positive stories that showcase our district staff and students. This summer, again, this is overarching, I want you to know, but this summer we're working on a video set that will highlight each of our academies as well as course selection at the high school. And we did do some fun videos this year on course selection, but we have a much more expanded approach. From there, we're going to work with our intermediate schools and then elementary. Again, I keep saying a comprehensive public relations, thoughtful approach. But tonight, we are here to premiere our district video and introduce to the board our accomplished actors who made this video possible. They are the children of staff members who attend our school district and schools. So I'm going to introduce each actor to you, and once you see this video, you'll understand how much work went into it, and they've each prepared a word or two to share with you. So our first actor I'm going to introduce is Braden Bai. His mom is Robin Bai, and she is our student data coordinator. Braden, what would you like to share with us tonight?
I would like to say that it was a fun experience doing the video, and I liked representing the performing arts section, because most of my middle school career I was in band, so I kind of understood what it was like.
You did an excellent job. Our next actor is Ashlyn Coleman. Her mom is Teresa Whitney, and she's a special education program manager. Ashlyn, would you like to add anything?
It was really fun, and I would definitely do it again.
Well, good. We have plans for that. Our next actors were Michael Nora and Mason Nora. Their mom is Michelle Hendrick Nora, principal at McNeil Intermediate.
I think that we have a really good DLI program. Yo creo que tenemos un muy bien programa de español.
Excellent. Mason, would you like to add something? Okay.
I like to do in the video because you get to put on different clothes and stuff.
You did. You looked very handsome in this video with those extra clothes that you were wearing. Our next actress is Gisela Pena. Her sister is Crystal Pena, who is our home liaison, bilingual home liaison. And you kick off the video, Gisela. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
It was definitely something new for me, but it was overall a fun experience in my opinion.
Good. And she starts our video and ends the video. And then last but not least is our actor Nora Walker. Her mom is Brooke Walker, which is in our central enrollment office. And her dad is Kyle Walker. He's a teacher at Beloit Memorial High School. Nora, would you like to add some comments before we show the video?
Yeah, I love being in the video because it was very fun to be an astronaut. And Nelson and Anna, who did the video, were also very kind.
Well, very good. Thank you so much for your comments. So I want to make one last comment. The video is being shared in English, but please know we are finalizing the Spanish version. Spanish is a beautiful, intricate language, but it takes up far many more words in Spanish than it did in English, and Maria's smiling here. So the video script was about 20 seconds longer in Spanish than English, and we're doing some editing, but we're going to give it the same showcase that we're doing this. It was filmed during COVID, but protocols were completely followed. Our student actors would tell you we went through a lot of pain to get this done in this way. We started in late September and just wrapped up, the first of the year. So all children can dream and think beyond now at the school district of Beloit. And Maria's sharing.
When I dream about my future, I'm grateful that my education gave me the foundation to build any life I can imagine. Growing up in the school district of Beloit, my friends and I have had amazing opportunities that other schools don't offer. Teachers provided us with one-on-one instruction from the beginning, and they encouraged us to dream about what will become in the future. Science, technology, engineering, and math coaches helped our teachers prepare us for our work in intermediate school, high school, and even college. We received iPads starting in kindergarten, and since the school district of Beloit offers dual language immersion, our teachers instructed us in 2 languages from the beginning. We'll graduate with biliteracy certification thanks to our inclusive, diverse learning environment, giving us a leg up in any career we choose, anywhere in the world. Intermediate school gave us a challenging science, technology, engineering, and math education that paved the way for us to become the innovators, leaders, and CEOs of the future. Many of us chose an accelerated career path by taking an interest assessment that began our college and career education early through our 5 specialized academies, giving us a competitive advantage after high school. Our nationally recognized band, orchestra, arts, and drama programming in high school inspires and enriches our creativity, ultimately benefiting whatever occupation we choose. I think all parents want the best life for their kids, and I'm lucky that mine sent me here. After all the opportunities we've had in the school district of Beloit, my friends and I have all the tools we need to succeed in this ever-changing world. Soon, I'll graduate high school with a 2-year college degree, and I couldn't be more ready for my future. When I'm thinking beyond now.
So that is our video. I want to thank our student actors who helped us pull this together. And just know it's going to be a theme going forward. All videos, the academies and all that is all about making our dreams come true for every student in our district. We're going to post it on Facebook tonight. I encourage all of you to share it out. Tomorrow, the video will be highlighted on our websites. We'll be using it in our recruitment. So we have lots of plans for the use of this video, again, laying the foundation for what we plan to do moving forward.
Thank you so much, Ms. Christopa, and I'll save my words because I see that there are folks in the chat. So go ahead, Board Member Levy, followed by Board Member Jacobs.
First of all, kudos to everyone who is involved. That video is beautiful, and I am so excited that it is attached to the School District of Beloit. Just 2 points. One, are there going to be other videos like this moving forward? Okay,
yes, as I mentioned, thank you, Board Member Levy. We are doing the 5 academies next, so we can really hone in on our academy process, and then intermediate, and then elementary.
And I think it's so incredible that we are starting with the children of our staff who invest so much in this district. I think that's great. I would love for us to open this up to other students in the district, and I would also love to see students that are visibly and differently abled in the videos to make sure that that representation is there as well.
Well, thank you for those comments. We had a few challenges with COVID and being able to even be in our buildings this year. So kudos to the team of parents who work at our district and came forward and said, and us working to make it happen. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Jacobs, and then Board Member, Vice President Wong.
Wow. Wow, you guys. That was awesome. It's beautiful. It is. So you guys should be so proud of yourself. I'm so excited. And I'd like all the board members, please, to clap for them because that was amazing. Wow, guys, excellent.
Thank you so much, Board Member Jacobs. Vice President Wong, followed by Board Member Anderson.
Yeah, great job to all of you. That's very, very well done. I can see where it would have been fun doing it. Just out of curiosity, who is responsible for the production of the video?
Yeah, well, it's been a collaborative project with Nels and Anna Ackerland. They've done work up in Beloit for quite some time in a lot of capacities. So we went to them with an idea and we storyboarded it and thought it was a lot. This is a year in the making. So we've already started some storyboarding for our academies as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Board Member Anderson, and then Board Member Delgado.
That was actually a really good video, and I wanted to say you guys did a fantastic job with it. I truly look forward to seeing the videos to come.
Thank you so much, Board Member Delgado.
That was so awesome. I loved it. Thank you to the young actors. You guys did a great job, awesome job on that. And I can't wait to hear the Spanish version of it. And for sure, Ms. Christopa, Spanish can be a little bit longer. It takes us like double the time to do all the translations. So yes, I totally agree with that.
Right. But it sounds beautiful. We just have to figure out a way to make it work. And we will. Yeah.
It is. Spanish is a beautiful language.
Mm-hmm.
Gracias a los participantes.
They're so cute.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kieser?
I just want to add my thanks and congratulations. I know how hard all of you worked to make this 2 minutes just seem surreal. And so thank you so much for being the pioneers and the trailblazers. I can't wait to see what the next series of videos are going to be. So know that you are the trailblazers.
Thank you so much. I'm glad everybody else got to go first because I was legitimately choked up. That was so beautiful, and you should all be so proud, and I'm sure you are, but be even prouder. Like, that was amazing, and thank you so much for sharing your time and your talent with us. And thank you so much, Ms. Christopa, and your whole team. That was phenomenal. Look forward to more.
Thank you.
Wow, I wish every board meeting were like this. This is great. I hate to even move on, so I guess I'll just wish everybody a really good evening. Thank you so much all for coming this evening to join us for this. All right, we are moving on to item 4 now, the consent agenda. At this time, would anybody like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Sorry, my screen was a bit delayed. Go ahead, Board Member Levy.
Oh, I would like to pull off the frontline recruitment platform proposal. I just had a couple questions.
Sounds good. And so we are going to pull off item 4B. Thank you so much for that. Is there anything else that anybody would like to remove from the consent agenda at this time? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda without item 4B?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion at this time? Board Member Delgado, did you have a question or a comment?
No, sorry.
No, you're fine. I just didn't want to miss anybody. All right, sounds good. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda passes unanimously. So we're going to go back to item 4B, and I believe Vice President Wong, is that your committee? All right, Board Member Levy, did you have some questions that you wanted to address to to Vice President Wong or Dr. Kieser?
Yes, to whoever is available to answer, I'll just run through my list briefly. I noticed in the presentation that it states that HR can use pipelines to pre-qualify candidates, and I just want to make sure what measures are planned to ensure that unconscious bias is not eliminating candidates of color in the pipeline or pre-qualification process.
Certainly, that's a great question, and in a moment I'll turn over to Ms. Williams to speak a little bit more in detail about, but in essence, the idea of the pipeline is to actually specifically address implicit bias by forwarding candidates who already have the qualifications straight to the hiring committees. And so to provide a little bit more detail, I'll turn over to Ms. Williams.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, so when you're looking at creating pipelines, you're really looking at, well, first of all, it's the job description, right? So when you're creating those positions in the job descriptions, really looking at the minimum qualifications and ensuring, that people are meeting the minimum qualifications, and then all of those folks are screened and moved over to our hiring leaders. But for the purpose of pipelines, you also have to think about it like, what pipeline are we creating? So are we getting people here employed with a viable employment, and then working through either if it's a position where they're not a para yet, you know, what are the minimum qualifications for that, right? So it's passing whatever DPI test is a requirement. So there's that piece. If it's somebody that may be in a para role, but then you're working towards the certification piece, ensuring, you know, that we're tracking where they're at within that pipeline of obtaining that certification. So it's really just a tracking mechanism in a sense. So you can use it for the hiring component, but you can also track it for where they're at within their career path for that pipeline as well. Does that make sense?
It adds a bit more clarity. So
okay.
The pipeline concept, this is isolated to internal candidates, correct?
Not necessarily, no. So I think when we're visiting virtual recruitment fairs or traditional recruitment fairs, we can also have people in the pipeline that way. So if we know people are maybe interested in employment opportunities here in the district, we're also capturing it that way. And let's say we've had conversations with folks and we know that they're interested, we can keep them in what we would call our pipeline in a sense. So it's probably not your traditional recruiting because we're actually going out and seeking and building relationships with people that way.
Perfect. So would it be fair to say that race and ethnicity markers will be captured so that we can ensure that we have a diverse pool of qualified candidates when we're making our hiring decisions? Is that also encompassed in the pipeline process?
Maybe not so much the pipeline process, but Frontline actually captures demographic information. So WeCan doesn't do that. And Frontline would be able to do that for us. So we would be able to see in terms of like our candidates that are applying some metrics on demographics and being able to pull it that way. Maybe not necessarily demographics that are tied to certain or to a certain person necessarily, but like we could be able to see like where people are learning of our positions and maybe the demographics of people that are applying for certain positions.
Okay, thank you. So my next question was, the presentation also mentioned job requisition through recommendations for hire. So my question is, who can recommend a potential hire and what does that process look like?
Yep, so the requisition piece is really, so that's done on the back end. And when our hiring leaders are looking to post a position, we're using Skyward right now to do that. And so that's the requisition piece that ties the position to the available FTE that we have. And so that's really the first piece in the recruitment process. Once that FTE is approved and posted, then we go through the recruitment process of that. So that includes the screening, the interviewing, and then once the interviewing is done, then the recommendation is done. And what our hiring leaders are currently doing is submitting that form in a hard copy format to the HR department.
Perfect. So I think I was thinking about it differently than what you just presented. I was just, the way I read the presentation, if a community member, a community partner said, hey, I think this person is really skilled and talented, they would be a great fit for the district. But it sounds like this is after the interview process, who is being recommended for the position out of that pool. Okay, totally different thing. So my next question, kind of a few, but they're all bundled together. There were two proposals, Proposal 1 and Proposal 2. It looks like Proposal 1 would include WeCan and Frontline for this year and also next year. Proposal 2, it looked like, but I just wanted clarity, would it just be we would drop WeCan and stick with Frontline for the rest of this year and then Frontline only moving to next year?
So really, yeah, Proposal 2 is like really taking that leap of faith and really just flying solo with Frontline. And I included Proposal 1, where we would run with two systems concurrently to build the confidence that we would have that frontline is really doing the heavy lifting for us that we're hoping, it does. And also to be able to obtain metrics. And so before we were ever to drop We Can and make sure that people are comfortable with just, using frontline exclusively, having We Can there to kind of, provide that cushion before we jump into frontline. Also, our HR team too, we have a learning curve with learning frontline as well. There's also candidates in Wisconsin and within our community that are familiar with We Can. So people will still go to We Can. And so we want to be able to advertise and market frontline right and do it in a way that people are feeling comfortable before just going exclusively with frontline.
Perfect. And I didn't go back and watch the video in the spirit of full disclosure, so I'm not sure which proposal the Planning and Budget Committee went with. But two final things. The information was included, but I wasn't clear on why. It said the frontline cost included 10% discount for a 3-year agreement, but that wasn't included in either of the proposals. Was there a reason that was included?
Probably, I would say maybe just like in the spirit of like space on the slide, or probably not getting into the details or anything like that, but I do have those numbers that I can provide.
No, it won't be necessary if it wasn't a part of the proposal. I was just wanted to make sure there wasn't something I was missing. And then my final question is, the implementation fee is included with that prorated amount for the first year, and it's $10,700. And I am just curious, like, what is involved in that $10,000 plus implementation?
So the implementation fee, and it's quite common when you do adopt a software platform that there is an implementation fee to that. But this would include them helping us set up our own systems and structures, and helping us with figuring out our formats, our own forms, there's a training component to that as well. The ability of Frontline and Skyward being able to talk with each other in terms of data dumping either way, from Frontline to Skyward or Skyward to Frontline, they can help us set up those parameters. So I know that there might be a little bit of a sticker shock to that, but the training alone will be well worth it for our team.
Perfect. And when you say team, is that specifically HR, or are they going to loop in tech as well?
So definitely HR, and then we have a posting for a recruiter position that's currently open right now. So definitely HR, and then I think anybody that I think could benefit from learning the platform will definitely loop in.
Perfect. That's all of my questions. Thank you so much. Did the Budget Committee, Board Member Wong, did you all go with Proposal 1 or 2?
We sent to the board for approval proposal number 1, which included We Can, just to provide that, I guess, that comfort level of knowing that We Can is still there as a backup just until they can get up and running. I would think after a year, we're going to be reevaluating that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for those excellent questions, Board Member Levy. Does anybody else have any questions at this time for the Frontline agenda item? And thanks so much to the Planning and Budget Committee for making that recommendation and moving that forward. At this time, there is recommended action language in 4B, if anybody would like to make a motion at this time.
I'll move approval of the new recruitment software platform Frontline to be used in conjunction with We Can for a total cost of $23,129.08 for the first year and $32,108.84 for the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion at this time? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody, for your participation. And we are now on 5A, which is future board meeting dates. Tomorrow evening, we'll meet both virtually and in person for our board retreat, which will begin at 6 p.m. Although, if anybody is open to 6:15, I would appreciate that, but it's probably too late to change that. So I might be a couple minutes late. I have to drop my daughter off somewhere. But anyway, so tomorrow, Wednesday at 6 p.m., we will have our board retreat. We have a special board meeting that will be in closed session, which is our preliminary superintendent evaluation, which is going to be Tuesday, March 16th at 6 p.m. So that will likely not be televised at all because we'll just be meeting in open session just to go into closed session. Policy and Personnel Committee meets Tuesday, March 23rd at a time yet to be determined. We have a regular board business meeting on Tuesday, March 23rd at 7 p.m. And we have our Governance Committee meeting on Wednesday, March 24th at 5:30 p.m., it looks like. All right, so does anybody have any questions at this time? Let me just check our chat. We're good? All right, if there's no other board business for open session, I would accept a motion at this time to go into closed. And before we do, anybody watching at home, at this time, we will be taking a motion to go into executive session and we will adjourn from there. So I think we are done with the televised portion of this evening. Would anybody like to make a motion at this time?
I'll do it. I make a motion to convene the Board of Education into closed session pursuant to section 19.85, para 1, para C, relative to considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercise responsibility. Section 19.85, para 1, para E, relative to deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specific public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and section 19.85, para 1, para G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved.
Thank you. Is there a second at this time?
Second.
I second it.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Shope, may we please have a roll call vote?
Anderson?
Aye.
Jacobs?
Aye.
Wong?
Aye.
Delgado?
Aye.
Levy?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much, and thank you, everybody. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Board members, we'll see you in a couple minutes in closed session. Thank you so much.